The first time my daughter called me a burden, she thought the dishwasher was loud enough to cover it. I was standing in the pantry with a glass casserole dish pressed against my chest. Laura was 10 feet away in the kitchen, speaking to a woman from her neighborhood committee. "We love having Dad here," she said. "But honestly, he has become a burden. Once we get him somewhere with more support, we can finally use the downstairs properly." The woman gave the soft little laugh people use when they do not know whether they have just heard a joke or a confession. Laura kept talking. "The house is too big for one family and an elderly parent. Daniel wants an office. Sophie needs a study room. We are trying to make the next stage work for everyone." I looked down at the casserole dish. I had repaired its loose handle that morning because Laura said she needed it for the committee lunch. Then I stepped backward before either of them saw me. I carried the dish to my downstairs room, set it on the dresser, and took the old brass house key from my pocket. Laura had made a blue ceramic bowl in 7th grade. It still sat beside the front door, slightly crooked, with one thumbprint pressed into the glaze. I placed my key inside it. Then I sent one sentence to the attorney who had handled my wife's trust. "Please send me a current certified copy of the deed." I did not yet know whether I was protecting a house, a memory, or what remained of my place in my daughter's life. Before I tell you why that key mattered, tell me where you are listening from tonight. Laura found me in the dining room 20 minutes later. Her committee friend had gone. The casserole dish was on the table between us. "Why didn't you bring this out?" she asked. "I heard you talking." Her fingers tightened around the serving spoon. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know Daniel needs an office." "Dad, that was not how it sounded." It sounded clear. She put the spoon down and glanced toward the hallway, checking whether her husband or daughter was close enough to hear. Laura said she was tired. She worked all day, then came home to appointments, prescriptions, stairs, furnace problems, and groceries. She insisted she had been describing the pressure, not attacking me. "I schedule my own appointments." "I am aware. I pay for my prescriptions." "I know that too. And the furnace belongs to the house." She rubbed her forehead. "This is exactly what I mean. Every conversation turns into an accounting exercise." I almost told her that people start counting when they no longer know what they mean to each other. I did not. I asked one question. "Are you planning to move me?" "No one is moving you." "Then why did you say, 'Once we get him somewhere'?" She looked toward the front window. "We have discussed senior communities, that is all." "You discussed them with me?" "Not yet." There was my first answer, and inside it sat a larger question. Not yet meant she intended to discuss it after something else had already been decided. I was 71 then, 3 years past a knee replacement and 4 years past losing my wife, Ellen. I moved carefully on cold mornings, but I still drove, cooked, handled my finances, and volunteered twice a week at a neighborhood repair clinic. Laura did help me after surgery. For 6 weeks, she changed bandages, brought meals downstairs, and stood beside me while I learned to trust my leg again. I never forgot it. The trouble was that I had started treating those 6 weeks as proof that our whole relationship was healthy. It was easier than asking why she rarely sat down unless she needed a check signed, a repair approved, or Sophie picked up from school. The house had entered our family 12 years earlier, after Daniel's contracting business lost its largest client and their landlord declined to renew the lease. Laura was 30. Sophie was a baby. They had 38 days to find somewhere they could afford. Ellen and I used a certificate of deposit meant for retirement travel to make the down payment on a 4-bedroom brick house outside Columbus. The deed went into the Hale Family Living Trust. Laura and Daniel signed an occupancy agreement prepared by our attorney. Their monthly contribution covered taxes, insurance, and part of the maintenance. It was not rent in the usual sense, and it was not equity either. At the time, everyone understood that. Or I believed we did. The arrangement was never hidden in a locked drawer. Each January, the county tax notice arrived in the trust's name. The insurance declarations also listed the trust as the property owner, and Laura usually placed those envelopes in the blue bowl with the rest of my mail. Their monthly contribution began well below the rent charged for similar homes nearby. We adjusted it twice, as taxes and insurance increased, always in writing. The trust kept a separate account, and Daniel could see which repairs came from it. Visibility was not the same as clarity. I saw the documents passing through the kitchen and assumed everyone still understood the original agreement. Laura saw 12 years of payments, repairs, birthdays, and ordinary life, and began treating time itself as a transfer. Neither of us stopped to say the sentence the other needed to hear. By avoiding that conversation, I allowed gratitude, expectation, and ownership to become tangled together. One memory kept returning to me that afternoon. Laura was 15, standing beside me in my old garage with sawdust in her hair. She wanted a bookshelf for her room, but she refused to let me build it alone. When the first shelf leaned to the left, she frowned and said, "No one will notice." I handed her the level. "You will," I told her. We took it apart and started again. That shelf was still upstairs in Sophie's room. Somewhere between then and now, my daughter had stopped believing crooked things needed to be corrected. 2 years after we bought the house, Ellen asked me to sit with her at the kitchen table. "Someday, Laura may believe this house is already hers," she said. I have told her it will stay in the family. That is not the same sentence. She knows what we mean. Ellen folded the occupancy agreement and pushed it back toward me. People hear promises through whatever they need. Revisit this every few years. I did not. That was my part in what followed. I had confused avoiding conflict with preserving peace. I had also used money as a substitute for difficult conversations. When Laura needed a roof, I paid the contractor. When Daniel's truck failed, I helped with the replacement. When Ellen died and I sold our smaller bungalow, I used part of the proceeds to pay off the remaining mortgage on the family house. Laura asked me to move into the downstairs study after that. "We should be together," she said. I wanted to believe together meant I belonged there. So I did not ask whether she wanted her father or simply felt responsible for him. The certified deed arrived by secure email the next morning. Owner, Hale Family Living Trust. Trustee, Martin Hale. The words were not a weapon. They were a fact I had allowed everyone to stop saying aloud. 3 days later, a man carrying a tablet and a laser measure rang the doorbell. "I am here for the valuation," he said. "What valuation?" He checked the address. Home equity application, Laura and Daniel Mercer. Laura came down the stairs before I answered. "Oh, good. You found it." She opened the door wider. I did not move. "What loan?" I asked. Her expression changed by a fraction. "It is preliminary." "For what?" "Daniel has a chance to take over a cabinet shop. We need to know what the house can support." "The house is not applying for a loan. Dad, please do not do this in front of him." The appraiser looked from her to me. "Are you the owner, sir?" "The trust is." "And you are the trustee?" "I am." He lowered the tablet. "Then I need authorization before I can proceed." Laura stepped onto the porch with him and spoke quietly. I could not hear every word. I did hear her say, "There must be an old record." The appraiser left without measuring a room. That evening, Laura placed her phone on the kitchen counter and called the lender's title department on speaker. "My father says the trust still owns the property," she said, "but we have lived here 12 years and paid every month." The title officer asked for the parcel number, then waited while the record loaded. "The current titled owner is the Hale Family Living Trust," the woman said. The title officer explained that contributions toward expenses did not create ownership without a separately recorded interest. Laura stared at me. "Can the trust transfer it?" She added that only the trustee could authorize a transfer and advised Laura to speak with an attorney. After the call ended, she left the phone on the counter. "You never transferred it." "I did not. You paid it off and never transferred it. That was never our agreement. You said this house would be mine. I said it would stay in the family." "Whose family, Dad?" The question was sharper than the one about ownership. I pulled out a chair. "Sit down. Tell me what you believe happened." She remained standing. She said she believed Ellen and I had bought the house for her family. She believed 12 years of living there and caring for both of us had made it hers in every way that mattered. To her, keeping the deed in the trust felt like keeping a legal hand around their necks. "I never used the deed against you." "You did not have to. You kept it. That is not the same thing. To you." I let her breathe for a moment. I reminded her that I had heard the kitchen conversation and discovered the loan application. I told her this was her first chance to explain everything. "Are you planning to move me out and take the deed?" Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed hard. "We are trying to create stability." "For whom?" "For all of us." "Does all of us include me?" She said it should not be wrong for her and Daniel to know what came next. "That is not an answer." She finally sat. She explained that Daniel needed $200,000 to buy the cabinet shop. The bank had said the house could support most of the loan, and they had built their plan around my signature. "You thought, or you planned?" "We planned around what you promised." "And the senior community?" Her mouth tightened. "You cannot stay downstairs forever. I can decide that with my doctor. You are not seeing what this costs me. I am asking you to show me." She stood again. "You always make me prove my pain before you believe it." Then she walked out. She had explained her pressure, but she had not apologized for the insult, the secret loan, or the plan that involved my life without my consent. I let her leave without following her. For once, I did not rush to make the discomfort disappear. The next week changed the atmosphere of the house. Nothing dramatic happened. That made it worse. My coffee mug moved from the cabinet beside the sink to a shelf in the downstairs bathroom. Laura started leaving my mail in a plastic basket near the basement door. Daniel stopped asking whether I wanted to join them for dinner. He carried plates past me with the careful politeness of a man crossing a room where someone was sleeping. Sophie still knocked on my door after school. She was 13, tall for her age, with Laura's habit of narrowing one eye when she was trying to solve something. On Thursday, she sat on the edge of my desk chair and asked, "Are you taking our house away?" I closed the drawer I had been organizing. "Who told you that?" "Mom said you changed your mind about letting us keep it." "I have not taken anything away." "Then why is Dad looking at apartments?" I did not answer immediately. Children notice the pause adults hope to hide inside words. "Your parents and I are discussing the house," I said. "You did nothing wrong, and you do not have to choose a side." She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Mom says family should not need paperwork." Paperwork matters when people remember the same promise differently. Do you still love her? Always. Even when she is mad. Especially then. Love is not the part I am confused about. After she left, I called Nina Patel, the attorney who had updated the trust after Ellen died. Nina did not promise a quick solution. She asked for every document, payment record, and message connected to the property. Nina confirmed that I was the trustee and current beneficial owner. She also warned that Laura and Daniel had occupied the home for years. Any change had to follow the agreement and proper notice requirements. A family dispute was not an excuse for careless legal action. That is what I want. What outcome do you want? I looked at the brass key on my desk. I told her I wanted my daughter to tell the truth before the paperwork decided for us. Nina asked whether Laura had ever been promised a specific transfer date. She had not. Did you tell her the house would eventually be hers? I had. Did you explain what eventually meant? I had not. I had left the most important word undefined, then acted surprised when Laura supplied her own meaning. Nina suggested a written family mediation before any notice was issued. She also advised me to obtain an independent valuation, not for a loan, but so everyone would know the actual options. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered records. The original occupancy agreement showed that Laura and Daniel's monthly payments were contributions toward taxes, insurance, and routine upkeep. It also stated that no payment created an ownership interest. The bank statements showed I had covered the new roof, the sewer repair, and the furnace replacement from the trust account. I did not make a list of every birthday gift, grocery run, or school fee. Those were family acts, not invoices. But the house itself had to be separated from the story we had been telling around it. Daniel came downstairs one night while I was sorting receipts. He closed the door behind him. I did not know the deed was still in the trust, he said. Laura did not tell you? She said the transfer happened after you sold your bungalow. It did not. He nodded slowly. I should have checked. I told him he should have. He accepted that without argument. Daniel said the shop was not a fantasy. He had worked there on contract for 5 years, knew the operation, and believed he could run it after the owner retired. I believe you might. We cannot finance it without collateral. That does not make my house your collateral. It does not. He looked at the folders on my desk. He said, Laura felt as though she had spent her adult life waiting for me to decide whether she had earned the right to stay. Did she say that? More than once. Why did you not tell me? Because the arrangement worked for me too. I respected him more for that answer than I would have respected another excuse. He had not created Laura's resentment, but he had been willing to benefit from it. Are you planning to place me in a senior community? I asked. He looked toward the closed door. We toured one, without me. He gave one small nod. Did you reserve anything? I do not know. That was the first time I believed him less than I wanted to. 2 days later, Laura slid a folded note under my door. Dinner Sunday. Just us. No lawyers. Please. I read it twice, then set it beside the brass key. Sunday evening, she cooked roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Nothing was catered. Nothing arrived in plastic containers. Sophie set the table and placed my chair where it had been before the committee lunch. Daniel poured water for everyone. Laura did not begin with the house. She asked about the repair clinic. She asked whether my knee still hurt when rain came through. She listened to the answers. For almost an hour, we were a family eating dinner instead of 4 people waiting for a document. Then Laura put down her fork. I am sorry I called you a burden. I let the words sit between us. It was cruel, she continued. I was overwhelmed, and I said something I cannot take back. I appreciate that. I do not want to move you anywhere you do not choose. Daniel looked at her, then at me. We can pause the shop, he said. Laura nodded. And we can go to mediation, she added. She promised there would be no more surprises, loan applications, or paperwork prepared without everyone at the table. Sophie looked relieved enough that I had to turn my face toward the window for a second. I had wanted this apology more than I wanted control of the house. The apology reached the part of me that had been waiting for it. I wanted the relief to mean the danger had passed, although nothing had yet been tested. After dinner, Laura carried the plates to the sink. I dried them beside her. I never wanted you to feel trapped here, I said. She said she had never wanted to feel like a tenant in her own life. I should have talked to you years ago. Yes, she said, you should have. I did not defend myself. For the next 10 days the house softened. My mug returned to the kitchen cabinet. Daniel asked me to look at a cabinet design for the shop, not as an investor, but because he valued my eye. Laura and I chose a mediator together. Nina agreed to wait before sending any formal notice. I even asked her to draft an option that would allow Laura and Daniel to buy the house over time at an independently appraised price, with a protected right for me to remain in the downstairs suite. It would not be a gift, but it would give them a path. I hoped a clear path might finally do what my vague promises never had. On the 11th morning, Nina emailed the first draft of the purchase option. I went upstairs because the only printer in the house sat in a small alcove beside the kitchen. The machine clicked, pulled one sheet halfway through, and stopped. When I opened the rear panel, I found several pages folded against the rollers. They had been printed earlier and left inside after the jam. The first page was an application for Brookside Senior Living with my full name typed at the top. Laura was listed as the responsible family contact. A handwritten note on the next page read, "Target move-in, October, after property transfer and shop financing." Behind it was a draft quitclaim deed prepared by an online document service. It transferred the house from the trust to Laura and Daniel for $1. My signature line was blank. The application was dated 2 days after our apology dinner. I kept reading because part of me still expected to reach a page that changed the meaning of the others. Instead, I found a worksheet estimating how my pension and Social Security could cover the community's monthly charge. Beside the financing section, Laura had written one more line. "Dad is sentimental. Emphasize that this keeps the family together." Sophie came into the kitchen carrying her backpack and saw the pages in my hand. "Is that about the house?" she asked. "It is something your mother and I need to discuss. Are you leaving?" I looked at her and searched for a sentence that would not make her responsible for an adult choice. "Not today," I said. "And whatever happens, I will not disappear from your life." She studied my face, then nodded once and went to school. After the front door closed, I took the pages to my room. I did not call Laura. I did not call Nina. I sat on the edge of the bed and put the brass key in my palm. Ellen used to tease me because I polished keys before putting a house on the market. She said no buyer had ever rejected a property because the keys looked tired. I found an old cloth in my toolbox and began rubbing the dark marks from the metal. The key was already clean. I kept rubbing. My hand tightened until the teeth pressed into my skin. Then I stopped, opened my fingers, and saw 4 small red marks across my palm. I went upstairs and made coffee. Without thinking, I took down 2 mugs. I filled one and left the other empty beside it. For several minutes, I stood at the counter with my back to the room. I had spent years believing the worst thing that could happen was losing closeness with my daughter. That morning, I understood I had been purchasing the appearance of closeness by making myself useful. When the usefulness became inconvenient, I became the burden. I washed both mugs, although only one had been used. Then I called Nina. She read the documents that afternoon. Nina explained that the quitclaim draft had no legal effect without my signature and proper execution. The Brookside application did not commit me either. What mattered was the intention behind both documents. I said I understood. That evening, I placed the pages on the kitchen table before Laura came home. Daniel was still at work, and Sophie was at a friend's house. Laura stopped when she saw them. "The printer jammed," I said. She removed her coat slowly and sat across from me. "I did not submit any of it. You printed it after telling me there would be no more paperwork prepared without everyone at the table. I wanted to know what the options were. You already knew my option. Ask me before planning my move." She pressed both hands against the tabletop. "If we lose the shop, Daniel may never get another chance like this." "And if you get it, where am I in October?" "At Brookside, only if you agreed." "Then why was the move-in date written before you asked?" She looked away. I pushed the purchase draft Nina had sent toward her. It contained a family discount, independent financing, and a protected right for me to remain in the downstairs suite. "This is a real path," I said. "No one signs today. We take it to mediation, we correct what is unfair, and we stop making plans behind one another's backs." Laura read the first page without turning it. "The bank will not approve this unless the house is already ours. Then the shop may have to wait. You can say that because you are not the one losing it. And you can plan Brookside because you are not the one being sent there." She rose, leaving both sets of papers on the table. "I cannot keep proving that my family matters too. I have never asked you to prove that. I am asking you to stop treating my consent as a delay you can work around." She walked upstairs. The purchase proposal stayed where she had left it until morning. "What do you want to do?" I told Nina to obtain an appraisal and put every option in writing. Laura would have one final chance to choose a relationship that was not built around what I owned. Nina asked whether I wanted to remove Laura as a future beneficiary of the trust. "Not today." "Why not?" "Not while I am this angry. I do not want one terrible week making decisions that could outlive all of us." That did not mean I would leave things as they were. Over the next month, Nina arranged the appraisal, reviewed the occupancy agreement, and prepared 3 options. The house was worth more than any of us expected. Option 1 allowed Laura and Daniel to purchase it at a modest family discount, provided they obtained independent financing and signed a life occupancy agreement protecting my right to remain. Option 2 created a market-based lease for 2 years, with clear responsibilities and no promise of transfer. Option 3 required them to move after the notice period so the trust could sell the property. I also amended the trust in one limited way. A fixed portion of the eventual proceeds would go into an education account for Sophie, administered by an independent trustee. Laura could not borrow from it. I could not use it to control her. The rest would remain available for my housing, health, and care. It was the first time I had designed help without using it to purchase closeness or obedience. While Nina completed the documents, the house became a waiting room. We still shared an address, but nearly every ordinary sound carried a question. The garage door meant Daniel had heard from the shop owner. The printer meant Laura might be preparing another form. Footsteps on the basement stairs usually meant Sophie wanted help. I began wondering whether she also wanted to know if the room above mine would still be hers by winter. The independent appraiser came with my written authorization and spent nearly 2 hours measuring the house. Laura followed him from room to room, answering questions about the roof, furnace, and finished basement. I stayed at the dining table with the occupancy agreement open in front of me. The final valuation came in just under $620,000. Even after Nina applied the proposed family discount, Laura and Daniel would need financing far beyond what their lender had discussed. Nina sent the purchase terms to a mortgage broker chosen by Laura, not by me. The broker reviewed their income, existing debt, and Daniel's proposed business loan. Without using the house as collateral before the transfer, they qualified for less than $400,000. Daniel brought the letter downstairs that night. He placed it beside my folders and sat without removing his work jacket. "The shop owner needs an answer by Friday," he said. I asked whether the owner would extend the deadline. "He already gave me 3 weeks. I am sorry." Daniel looked at the financing letter. I should have built the cash before I tried to buy the opportunity. He did not ask me to fix it. 2 days later, he declined the purchase, and the owner began negotiating with another contractor. Laura blamed the timing, the lender, and finally me. She did not shout. She began packing books from the upstairs shelves into boxes marked storage, even though no decision about the house had been made. Sophie found me measuring the bookshelf Laura and I had built when she was 15. "Mom says it might not fit in an apartment," she said. "We do not know where it has to fit yet." She held the other end of the tape measure. "Could we take it apart and build it again?" I looked at the old screw holes and the pencil mark Laura had made on the back board 27 years earlier. "Yes," I said. "But we would have to be careful not to split the wood." Laura heard us from the doorway. "You make everything sound repairable," she said. "Not everything, but this shelf is." Her eyes moved from the bookshelf to Sophie, and then to me. "If you sell, she loses the only home she remembers. I have not chosen a sale. The purchase, the lease, and mediation are still available. A lease from my father is not security. Neither is a deed obtained by planning my exit first." She walked away before Sophie could ask what that meant. By the time we reached mediation, the shop opportunity was gone. The lender's limit was in writing, and the boxes in the upstairs hallway had made the possibility of leaving visible. None of us could pretend the meeting was only about a misunderstanding anymore. The mediation took place at Nina's office on a Tuesday afternoon. The room was small enough that no one could hide behind movement. 1 round table, 4 chairs, a box of tissues no one touched. Laura spoke first. "I do not understand why we need formal options," she said. "He already told us the house would be ours." The mediator asked, "Martin, what did you mean when you said that?" I explained that Laura would likely inherit an interest after my death, depending on the trust and whatever I needed for housing and care. I had never meant that she owned the property while I was alive. Laura looked at me. "You never said, 'depending on my needs.'" "No, I should have. And you let us build our life here." "I did. You let Sophie believe this was her home. It is her home. That does not make it her collateral." Daniel lowered his eyes. The mediator turned to Laura. "What outcome are you asking for today?" "The deed, not as a gift, as recognition." Nina slid the appraisal toward her. Nina pointed out that the purchase proposal included an 8% family discount and a protected right for me to remain in the downstairs suite. "We cannot qualify without using the house first," Laura said. "That is what I cannot authorize," I replied. "The bank wants the house to make the purchase possible before the house is yours." She pushed the appraisal away. "You have more money than you need. This is not about whether I can survive losing the house." "Then what is it about?" I told her it was about whether my daughter could ask for my home while secretly planning where to send me. She looked at Daniel. He did not rescue her. The mediator asked for a break. Laura refused. "No," she said. "Let us finish." I opened the manila folder and placed the Brookside application on the table. Her shoulders dropped. Daniel turned toward her. "You said you canceled that." "I was gathering information. The date is after dinner," I said. "I did not submit it. You wrote a move-in target, because if we did nothing, we would lose the shop. You apologized to me on Sunday." "I meant the apology. And on Tuesday you wrote that my sentimentality could be used to get my signature." She looked at the paper. "I was trying to keep the family from falling apart by deciding which part should be moved out." Her face tightened. Laura finally described what the years had felt like to her. When Ellen became ill, her life narrowed to appointments, medications, meals, and emergencies. I was present, but Laura felt every practical choice still passed through her. After the funeral, I moved in, and everyone expected her to feel grateful because the mortgage was gone. I listened, she continued. She said she had spent 12 years living in a place that could disappear if I changed my mind. For 4 years, she had wondered whether one bad day would make me rewrite the trust. "I am tired of being 42 and waiting for my father to decide whether I have been good enough." The anger in her words did not erase the truth inside them. I had kept the house vague because vagueness kept me important. As long as Laura needed my signature, my approval, or my help, I did not have to ask whether she would choose me without them. "I am sorry for that," I said. She blinked. I admitted that I should have made the arrangement clear and asked what caring for Ellen had cost her. I should not have treated repairs and checks as conversations. Her mouth trembled. For a few seconds, she looked like the girl who had stood beside a crooked bookshelf, waiting for me to tell her whether we could fix it. Then she pointed at the Brookside packet. "So you understand why I needed a plan." I told her I understood why she needed certainty. I still could not accept the way she had tried to get it. "What happens now?" Daniel asked. Nina placed the 3 written options in front of them. Laura read the first page, then the second. "This is an eviction with nicer paper." "No," I said. "It is a purchase, a lease, or a move. You have time to choose." "You would make your own granddaughter leave?" I said I would help Sophie through any transition, but I would not use her as a reason to avoid one. Laura folded her arms. "What if we refuse all 3? Then the notice process continues, and the trust sells the house after you leave." She looked directly at me. "You would sell our home to strangers. You were willing to borrow against it and send me to strangers." The mediator lowered her pen. No one needed a speech after that. The lease remained on the table. So did the discounted purchase, and the time to rebuild trust before either one. Laura looked at all 3 pages, gathered them into one stack, and said, "If you do this, do not expect us to come running back." I placed the brass key beside the Brookside packet. "I am not asking you to come running. I am asking you to stop using my love as collateral." That was the boundary I had spent 12 years avoiding. The consequences did not arrive the next morning. The appraisal did not force anyone from a bed. The Brookside packet did not disappear from memory. The title did not settle the family argument by itself. It took months. The failed mortgage review and the lost shop opportunity were already behind us. Nina gave Laura and Daniel 10 days to accept the lease or request reasonable changes to its terms. Laura hired her own attorney. I was relieved that she did. I did not want her agreeing to anything because she felt outnumbered in Nina's office. Her attorney reviewed the trust, deed, occupancy agreement, payment history, and Brookside documents. He did not claim Laura owned the house. His letters focused on notice, moving time, and reimbursement for 2 improvements Daniel had paid for himself. One claim involved custom shelving in the garage. The other involved a patio Daniel had rebuilt 8 years earlier. Nina and his attorney compared invoices, depreciation, and the wording of the occupancy agreement. The trust agreed to a limited credit at closing. That compromise mattered to me. Daniel had contributed real labor and money. Recognizing it did not turn 12 years of occupancy into ownership, and denying it would have made my position feel cleaner than the truth. Laura still rejected the 2-year lease. Through her attorney, she wrote that remaining as a tenant would preserve the same uncertainty that had damaged our relationship. I understood the sentence. I also noticed she no longer called the house legally hers. Nina issued the required notice under the agreement and applicable state law. Laura and Daniel received more than 90 days to arrange a move. When the original date would have forced Sophie to change homes during final exams, I approved one extension through the end of the school term. The extension was written, dated, and limited. It was for Sophie, not a quiet return to the old arrangement. During those months, Laura and Daniel applied for townhouses and smaller single-family rentals. Their budget could cover several of them, but each required deposits, moving costs, and proof that the business loan application was closed. The house went on the market in spring. Before the first showing, Laura removed family photographs from the hallway and packed Ellen's old serving bowls into a box marked Martin. She left the blue ceramic key bowl beside the front door. Prospective buyers walked through rooms while all 4 of us still lived there. They opened closets, measured walls, and discussed knocking out the dining room arch. I answered the agent's questions, kept the lawn cut, and polished the brass key, even though the front door used an electronic keypad by then. The first offer fell apart during financing. The second buyer asked for a large credit after inspection because the kitchen wiring needed updating. The trust paid for an electrician, corrected the problem, and returned the house to market rather than concealing it or forcing the issue onto someone else. Laura spoke to me only when necessary. Daniel remained civil and began taking weekend cabinet jobs to rebuild the savings they had expected to put into the shop. Sophie came downstairs almost every evening. We did homework, repaired a loose drawer on her desk, and packed the bookshelf hardware into labeled bags in case it had to be rebuilt somewhere else. We talked about everything except which adult had won. There was no winner. There was only a family learning that a decision could be necessary and still hurt everyone involved. A couple with 2 young children made the next offer after 6 weeks. Their financing cleared. The inspection issues were resolved, and the closing date was set for late June. 10 days before closing, Laura called me from the parking lot of the townhouse complex where they planned to move. Her voice was tired. Our deposit is due Friday. You told me. Daniel's credit line was reduced after the shop application. We are $12,000 short. I let the silence continue. If you cancel the sale, and let us stay another year. We can recover, she said. She offered another possibility. I could co-sign the townhouse. She insisted it would not be like before, because this time they would have a plan. She was asking for the same thing in a different parking lot, my signature between her family and a consequence. She had not called to repair what had happened. She had called because the next arrangement would not work without me. I offered to pay the deposit directly to the complex as a one-time loan, with terms prepared by Nina. I will not co-sign, and I will not cancel the sale. That is not enough. It is what I can offer, without returning to the same place. You are making us borrow from you after selling our home. I am helping you enter a home you can afford. She breathed into the phone. Do you forgive me? I forgive you. The word came more easily than I expected. Then why does this still feel like punishment? Because forgiving you does not mean signing the same kind of papers again. She said nothing for several seconds. I still need the deposit, she said. I hear you. Nina prepared a one-time, interest-free relocation loan capped at $12,000. I paid the townhouse complex directly, not Laura or Daniel, and repayment began 6 months later. I agreed, because Sophie needed a stable move before school resumed, not because the shop, the sale, or the old arrangement deserved saving. Laura signed it. Daniel signed it too. They moved into the townhouse before closing. Sophie got a smaller bedroom, but it had a window facing a maple tree. She sent me a picture of the first sunset from her desk. I bought a one-story condominium 15 minutes away. It had 2 bedrooms, a narrow patio, and no downstairs suite that could be described as temporary. On the day I moved, I packed the blue ceramic bowl in newspaper. The brass key went into my pocket. At closing, I handed the buyer 2 new keys and kept the old one. It no longer opened anything. I was not ready to throw it away. For nearly 3 months, Laura did not visit. She made the loan payments on time. She sent short messages about Sophie's school and nothing else. I did not chase her. That was another habit I had to break, creating emergencies so I could feel needed, then calling the need love. One Saturday morning in October, someone knocked on my condominium door. Laura stood outside holding 2 grocery bags. No forms, she said. I looked at the bags. No papers, no application, no check to sign. What is in them? Coffee, bread, soup, and the green apples you like. Why? She gave a small, tired shrug. Because I was at the store. It was not an apology big enough for a movie ending. It was better than that. It was the first thing she had brought me in years that did not require anything in return. I stepped aside. She carried the groceries to the kitchen and noticed the blue ceramic bowl beside the door. The old brass key rested inside it. You kept that? She asked. It does not open the house anymore. I told her she had every reason to remember it. She touched the crooked rim of the bowl. I remember making this. I remember receiving it. We made coffee and sat at the small table by the patio window. She told me the townhouse was cramped. I told her the condominium association had already sent me 2 notices about where not to put a flower pot. For a while, we spoke like 2 adults whose lives did not depend on one owning the other's shelter. Before she left, Laura stood by the door. I am not ready to say you were right about everything, she said. I was not right about everything. I did feel controlled. I believe you. And I did try to move you before asking what you wanted. You did. She looked at the old key. I am sorry. This time, there was no lender waiting, no deed in a printer, and no deadline behind the words. I nodded. I appreciate you saying it. She left without asking for anything. The door closed softly behind her. I picked up the brass key and held it for a moment before placing it back in the blue bowl. It did not open the old house. It reminded me of the years when Laura came through that door because she wanted to see me, not because she needed my signature. Laura and I were not repaired. Trust does not grow back because one person brings groceries and the other accepts them. But something honest had begun. She no longer had access to my home, my signature, or my money without clear terms. She still had access to a father who loved her. Those were no longer the same thing. So tell me this, would you have sold the house after discovering the plan, or offered one more chance to stay under strict written boundaries?